All right, I will call this August 1st Ordinance Review Committee meeting to order, and we'll start with the pledge.
Where's the flag? What's it?
I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay,
I
so
remember that from grammar school.
I'm gonna pass along, here we go, our agenda.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So, we do have quorum. The only one of us missing tonight is George. He sent along an email, said he would not be able to make it. So, some of our housekeeping items tonight. Last time we met, we talked about this email, the Newtown email. So this is not, we're gonna have to keep our Google group to converse amongst each other. And this laptop is set up now with a OneDrive, Microsoft, and so we have our own login on this town laptop. And any documents like the agenda or whatever, I just email it to this email so that we have a hard copy of all those documents on this laptop. Whenever I change something, I'll send a new version of our working copy of the zoning ordinance to this email. If any, we can check the email too to see if other townspeople have sent anything to it, although the town website still has the Google group email. So there might be a transition period, but I checked the Google group one anyway, so it doesn't matter if something comes in, either way we'll know. So I guess the only reason you guys need to know about this laptop is that everything is now here. If Lindsay needed to know something about Ordinance Review Committee, she could go in here and pull it up. Our agendas, whatever. So then, other housekeeping things I wanted to discuss was Michaela Jordan from SMPDC. She is the one that is working with the Comprehensive Plan Committee. She kind of stepped in and she's the one that said, okay, she's gonna send us this, that, and the other. She has not yet. They just signed the papers within the last couple of weeks, I think, right, Dave? And she's supposed to start feeding stuff to Comprehensive Plan. I reached out to Michaela and said, okay, now this is our budget, which if nobody knows that, it's $7,500 is Ordinance Review Committee's budget for SMPDC. And I've asked her to either come in and talk to us again or email me and let me know how we go like this with Comprehensive Plan, basically. I suspect that she's gonna say, as I have said right along, that Comprehensive Plan is gonna have to get ahead a little bit more. But I am very specifically wanting to know if we can start with, sections 1 and 2 and the zoning districts, having her at least look at that and come back and inform us and say, yeah, I think you guys should have some transitional districts or whatever. I did just send that email out a couple days ago and I got an auto response back, which tells me she was on vacation this week. It was actually blank, but I assume because it was an auto response, it was meant she was on vacation. So I think by the time we have our next meeting, I should have more information on that and we'll go from there. We'll just keep chugging along in the zoning ordinance until we get more direction from her. That's really all we can do, unfortunately, because that's a really big deal. And it's just not our bailiwick, so it's gonna be done by Public hearing, we touched on that. Public hearing, August 15th. Lindsay's taking care of all the notices that we need. We have the 5 articles. And if you guys do not have copies, does everybody have copies of the 5 articles?
No.
You do not?
I don't think I have copies
I
either.
will send them out to you guys. Yep, I can send them out.
And you have copies of written up pieces, I'm not sure I
Sure.
have one file.
I'll actually give them to you guys before you leave. Lindsay will make copies, and she will have them here for the public. So we should be good with that. Okay, there's that. And then tonight, we are going to go to section 3. Now, section 3 is non-conforming lots. And on your agenda tonight, I printed out, this is a rundown on the, attached to your agenda. This is the part of Rundle zoning ordinance that deals with conformity. And we're on page 6 of our zoning ordinance. So, the reason I picked Arundel to kind of look at is because, first of all, they have a population that's kind of similar to us. Their tax base is obviously much higher. But their zoning ordinance was done by SMPDC. It was completely overhauled and redone. It's actually quite a beast. This is a Arundel zoning ordinance. It's huge, but it's a great ordinance, and there's a lot of things that I think we can garner from that. And what was Dave saying was the greatest thing about plagiarizing?
Compliment.
Greatest compliment is plagiarism. So let's just start with 3.1, and I'll let you guys read through section 3.1, and we can talk about it after that. While I get logged in.
Are you referring to the land use, the use of land, buildings, or structures?
Article 3, non-conforming use.
You mean
Lots and
For
structures.
Arundel?
Yeah, are we discussing 3.1.1?
Yes.
Okay, so
3.1 down to 3.2.
So- I'll read it.
Yeah.
The use of land, buildings, or structures lawful at the time of adoption or subsequent amendment of this ordinance may continue, although such use does not conform to the provisions of this ordinance. It may continue, although such use does not conform to the provisions of this ordinance. Yeah,
So it's grandfathered.
that's right, basically.
Yeah.
They say it's grandfathered.
Yep.
I'm just trying to log in here, guys.
I don't have a problem with that.
I didn't see anything in that section at home when I looked at it that I thought,
So, oh my God, this password is not working. Hold on one sec, guys.
And you're only grandfathered if what you're doing at the time of adoption is in fact lawful.
Well,
There we go.
what if it was lawful to, I don't have an open air butcher?
But it has to be lawful at some point. It's not something that We just let skate by.
Oh, gotcha.
All right. I got our working draft up now. And I'm gonna have to fix that. Okay, so let's. Page 6. So y'all didn't have any problems with that, right?
Okay for everyone?
Better.
It's for
Better,
me, yeah.
better. Yeah, I gotta get that up. Hold on. All right, so I just had a note here to look at this 3.1.1. I noticed that in the arundel that I attached here to our agenda, I noticed that the wording was a little under 4.8.1. It's a little more beefy. And I'm just wondering if we should beef it up or if everybody is okay with that. Maybe some accordance language could go in there, but again, if you guys feel that it doesn't need it, that's okay.
I'm good with it.
Okay. And then in
Oh, she was
our
confused.
ordinance, 3.1.2, a non-conforming building or structure may be repaired or maintained, but the use shall not be intensified except in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance.
We talked about this
We did.
before,
That's
and I have a
why.
note saying define.
Intensified.
Yeah.
Correct. So we had, way back when, we had made it to this section, and somebody had a question mark about the word intensified in 3.1.2. And basically they wanted to know what would that entail? And the definition of intensified means to alter the character to the extent that it generates a new or greater impact. And I think that's spot on. I think that intensified word is spot on for that,
But we should put that in the,
perhaps, instead of.
In the
word,
dictionary?
Put that in.
What would
the
an example
Definition.
of that be?
You have a house on a non-conforming lot and you meet all the setbacks, but you decide you want to attach an ADU to it.
Or you want to add a second level, it's only one level, right? Can you do that on a non-conforming? If
Yeah,
that's
you
a
should be.
margin, That's,
you should be able to though.
really?
Yeah, because you're not expanding
the
the
footprint.
footprint.
As long as you're not expanding the footprint, but
Or you're
intensifying
expanding the
you would be.
use. Because now it's a, one bedroom to a three
Yeah, but the
bedroom.
use would be residential.
Yeah.
So.
You're not turning it into a bed and breakfast or something.
Right.
Right,
Or you're
Right.
intensifying the impact by
So then I don't get
putting
the
more
word
bedrooms in your house,
intensified.
which puts more people in your house, which puts more potential impact in the school. Is that headed down that road?
yeah.
I don't think we should go, I don't think we should do that. We're talking a smaller lot. If you put 2 or 3 more bedrooms or whatever it is, are you still going to be able to fit a septic on it? Are you still going to have a well on it? So
Yeah, and my question
there are
is-
other things that,
I guess I just worry that the word intensify is open to opinion.
It
It
can
can be
be
read
a lot.
one way this,
well, not if we put it in the definitions.
I think the definition of intensify
Is ambiguous.
is ambiguous.
Yes.
Itself.
Yes. Now, that house that sold on Chapel Shores Drive just recently for $800,000, he had changed the number of bedrooms And, everybody did their due diligence, and the buyer knew he had to put in a new septic because there were now 5 bedrooms in the combined 2 units. And still bought it, and right away it was done. With the new systems, I mean, it was much different than I had seen a septic, before they can fit. But if anything, we want to make everything enforceable. As Brenda had said to us, the ordinances need to be enforceable. And who determines intensification of a use? I mean, is it something that, and who's going to monitor that? Is it better to not have it in there?
What's that?
Where was that definition you read?
I actually pulled that definition off of another zoning ordinance,
Oh,
and
okay.
I just had it written in my margin.
I mean, does that call
Hey,
into,
Siri,
say,
what is the definition of
Matt's,
intensified?
area of expertise? Does Matt make a decision that, well, the use is intensified, it's
Okay, I
impacted?
found this on the web for what is the definition of intensify area of expertise. Does Matt make a decision that well? Check it out.
But again, every time I read this though, it sort of leads me to say, okay, what does it mean? So I'm reading the definition, and intensify means to alter the character. Okay, so
Whatever you do technically alters the character.
that's what I would think. Like I said, if you had a second floor, didn't you just alter the character of that home? Seems like you did,
I don't know, is it, I'm,
to the extent.
Maybe they made
that
up-
it generates
maybe
a
they made
new
up
or
the
greater
definition, but
impact.
I don't see how it does, how it
I always thought we
how it
were,
works.
Well, so first of all, if you're on a non-conforming lot and you're building a home, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but the setbacks are smaller for non-conforming lots.
no, they're not.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
They're-
It just, that may make it
And you-
non-conforming though,
No,
because you
they're
don't
not.
have the setbacks.
The non-conforming lot, from the date it was created,
Mhm.
would have to meet the setbacks of that date.
Right.
The non-conforming lot could have 5 different setbacks. It was the date the lot was created becomes
Right, so if it was,
their setbacks.
if it was 25 feet and then later the town said, no, we need 50 feet.
It's still 25.
Right, they're okay,
Yeah.
but if they do anything, change, like tear down a house or something, I imagine they gotta now
Well,
go to the 50 feet.
It's still a
setback.
25-foot setback.
Well, does that word intensified have to be in there? What if it just says the
It would
use
still be a 25-foot
you know,
setback.
shall not be
As
altered,
long as they meet the setbacks.
you know?
Why can't they do what they want?
So, let me just read here.
See, I like their definition. In Arundel, if you read Arundel's,
Mhm.
continuance, enlargement, reconstruction. Any non-conforming structure legally existing on the effective date of this ordinance may be continued, that may not be extended, expanded, reconstructed, enlarged, or structurally altered except as specified.
Yeah, I really like their definition, which is again
Isn't
why I
that
sent
very
this out.
restrictive?
Very restrictive.
Very restrictive. And I thought we were trying to be less restrictive on landowners.
Yeah, but non-conforming uses, you don't want them to be able to expand a non-conforming use.
Well, if you look at non-conforming lots, most of them are on the ponds and everything else. And I'm looking at the pond that David and I are on. And almost every one of those camps have been altered. They've actually been improved. They've
Yep.
been insulated.
Expanded,
The
yeah.
wiring and plumbing has been updated. But there's still a lot of these camps that haven't been touched. And basically, we're looking to handcuff these people.
Yeah, well, you know.
I don't think we can still fix
But
that.
it's still, our
You
ordinance
just
still
can't add to
says
it.
you can't alter it unless it conforms with the
With
provisions
this
of the ordinance.
ordinance.
So
Right.
I'm going back to the second floor. You can alter a home, put a second floor on it, because it conforms with our ordinance,
As long as it's not like over what, 35 feet?
35
something like
feet, yeah.
that.
right?
Yeah.
So you can intensify it as much as you want, as long as it still conforms to the ordinance.
Right, so
Right.
basically we're
So,
saying,
yes.
but the use does not change. I mean, do we need the word intensified in there where it's just open to so many?
I believe you do, because I think that a lot of people now are, so let's just say, I am actually on a non-conforming lot. My new home is a non-conforming lot. It's a lot of record. And we meet the setbacks, our home and everything meets the setbacks. We also have a barn. But if, let's just say we wanted to add a second home attached, 800-foot
ADU.
ADU onto the lot, is that considered intensify? Well, we have to allow an ADU on that lot now by law. We have to.
Yeah.
But I don't think our ordinance stops you.
It does.
I think
But
going back to the second floor routine, maybe I'm missing something. You can't put a second floor in your home and turn it into a supermarket.
That's how I see, that's
Because it
exactly
doesn't
how I
meet
see
our
it.
ordinance. You can't have a supermarket in,
In general purpose or whatever.
right?
That's changing use, not intensification.
But the language for Arundel does seem to be more restrictive.
Very
I think
restrictive.
it says the same thing ours does. It's just ours number 313, a non-conforming use may not be expanded. You can't expand a non-conforming use. It's the only reason you can keep it is because it was originally,
Are we talking about expanding the use? Because making a residence bigger, you are expanding the
That's correct.
use.
Um,
Are we trying to stop them from changing the use, putting a large addition and making it a supermarket?
I actually am with Matt on this, because the way I read it is that it alters the character to the extent that it generates a greater impact. So back to your supermarket thing, that's how I see it. So obviously, an ADU would not be considered an intensification. If you decided to put a 1,000-foot structure, you can meet setbacks on your non-conforming lot, and you put a 1,000-square-foot structure for dog grooming, I don't know, something, whatever. That would be an intensification of the impact of that lot. That's how I see it.
In general purpose, are there non-conforming lots that people are allowed to have home businesses on?
Some, if it's in the land use chart, yeah.
So are we stopping them from making any modifications or, it's just that word intensify is just,
complies with the ordinance, we're not stopping.
We're
right,
not.
it's just open to, it's such a nebulous,
Yeah,
definition.
Well,
I
it's
think
really
we
not.
can't lose sight of that last part of that
Right,
paragraph.
as long as it conforms with the provisions of this ordinance.
Right.
You can do whatever you want, if it,
So why do we need it to say intensify? It just simply has to conform to the ordinance. And then, you may not have neighbors going, well, they've intensified the use, before they did that, there were 7 cars per week, now there's 9 cars per week. And it's an unenforceable, why not just say, as long as the use conforms to the ordinance? Why does it
To
have
what
to have-
ordinance? To the current day ordinance?
it would have to be the
It
current
would have to be the
ordinance. You
current.
can't go back to an
Right.
old.
Well, there probably wasn't an ordinance back then.
Right, and I see, again, looking at what you gave us, it does have here, where was it that I was just reading? Restoration or replacement. So theirs goes on, and it does, even ours goes on, even the next page, it says exactly what theirs just said. It's all here, what theirs says is all in ours, just in different locations. 3.5.4, any non-conforming building which is hereinafter damaged or destroyed by fire, flood, lightning, wind, you can't build it bigger and you can't build it more. You can only build it to what you had, is what it says.
But
You cannot make it more non-conforming.
Right, but it can be bigger if it fits within,
Well, that would make it more non-conforming.
but,
Right.
so what are we striving for? Are we striving to handcuff people?
No, I'm just saying what it
No,
says.
Right, but that's Arundel. And-
No, that's ours.
Well,
That's ours.
okay,
So I believe, I actually do think that the word intensified should stay there. Because of the rest of that sentence, as Matt said, except in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance. So if a supermarket was allowed in general purpose, you could have a supermarket on your non-conforming lot as long as it meets setbacks. If a
But-
supermarket isn't allowed in general purpose on your non-conforming lot, then it cannot be intensified to that point.
Well, what they're saying is it's gonna have to meet the new ordinance. Why do they have to meet the new setbacks? If they got a 20-foot setback because the lot was created in 1970, now we change the ordinance, it's a 35-foot setback. What this is saying is they're gonna have to meet the 35-foot setback on a non-conforming lot.
If you
If
intensify,
you
Wow,
intensify,
That's handcuffing them right to, like Steve says, that's handcuffing them.
if you have to meet the new setbacks,
As
no matter
long as
what
they
you
meet the
do,
setbacks of their,
you can't meet the
They're not.
setbacks. You can't put a second addition on your
But-
house and,
yeah, I really believe too that we have to consider the fact that we are talking about non-conforming lots
Right.
here. There's not a lot of non-conforming lots.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sure there's
there is.
plenty.
Unless
Yes,
there's,
there's-
unless they're in
yes, there
shoreline
is.
zone.
Right, shoreline zone.
well, you're not in
different thing,
shoreline and you
Different-
have a
different thing, for sure.
non-conforming,
For sure,
you know, lot.
uh-huh,
But I'm just saying, if, it just seems that, originally shoreline zoning was for the protection of the pond. And as years go by, every community, the ordinance changes it just more restrictive, more restrictive, more restrictive. You can't do, I believe if you look at our shoreline zoning, you can't have a picnic table within 75 feet of the water. You can't do this, you can't do that. And it's just growing to,
it is.
things that you can't do.
And I understand what you're saying, you're worried about restricting people. And to Buzzy's point about meeting new setback requirements or whatever, if it changes. First of all, if it does change, if our setback requirements change, they're not gonna be greater. They are not.
well,
So you're actually giving them more. Because if our setback requirements do anything, they're gonna go down.
Now, why would you say that?
Because we've got pretty big
not
setbacks
good to
here compared to other.
It says it would have to meet this.
See, now,
ordinance.
originally, I'll use myself as an
Yeah, higher
example.
setback.
My septic and field had to be 75 feet from the water. Now, just before Morris, God rest his soul, passed, he had done some work for me across the street. And I said to him, I said, Morris, maybe now I just want to redo everything. So we had, I think the gentleman's name was Truman, and he says, well, you can't redo it. I said, what do you mean? He says, because now, everything has changed. You got to be 100 feet from the road. From the water. You'll have to expand the field. You'll have to move the stone wall. You have to do this. You have to do that. So maybe you want to just leave it, which we did. But things can go the other way, and that's always the history, the way it's been. We have been more restrictive, more restrictive. I certainly agree that the ultimate protection is the shoreline zoning and the habitat. But when you look at all the things you can't do, it just makes no sense. If you can't have, you can't have a patio here, you can't have a picnic table here.
Well,
And it's just,
I do agree to a certain extent. I think that we do need to be aware of people's property rights and so on and so forth, but it can't be the wild, wild west either. I think that, if our setbacks were to change, we would we would look at other neighboring towns, see what they have, so on and so forth. If it needed to be increased, it would be increased. I'm feeling pretty good about saying it's not, as far as a structure anyway, and which is what we're talking about, putting a structure. The setbacks are most likely not going to increase. I think that would be insanity.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think that it really intensified, I believe, needs to stay there. And I mean, I don't mind if we look at Arundel and add some wording in there, but I do think that intensified should stay there.
I wouldn't mind it staying there as long as we
We
make
know,
it clear that a non-conforming lot will always meet its setbacks and not this new setback that would be,
Yeah, if it's a
But I
non-conforming
did-
lot, it's not gonna have to anyway.
well, this is gonna have to meet this ordinance. And if
So,
this
so you're
ordinance
saying
goes up-
you're saying they can't put a second story addition on, or,
well, that's an intensification.
Yeah,
well, is
Put
it?
a second story on because
You
you're not gonna, your setbacks aren't gonna change.
You can't expand a non-conforming use. You can't expand it.
That's
It
what,
says it right in 3, a non-conforming use may not be expanded. You can't make it greater than what it is already.
So
More,
that has
more
nothing to do
non.
with it.
But that's a
Intensified, it has nothing to do with
non-conforming use.
anything other than,
it's,
it just can't
if
do
they
it.
have a residential lot, that's a non-conforming lot. It's residential. If they make their residential lot, their residential house bigger, that's still a conforming use.
Yes,
They can add
Exactly.
bedrooms or,
exactly.
they just can't add a mobile station
They can't put
Okay.
a 40-foot,
or a Citgo or something.
Dave, go ahead.
So I have a question. So-
I think we're definitely.
So when we were doing shoreland zone, one of the things that when we were thinking of changing, or I'm sorry, not changing, but proposing a change, it was to be fair with the people that aren't in shoreland zone, to have a balance.
Right.
This is the same thing. Because if in shoreland zone, you can expand, you can go up, then why can't somebody that's not in shoreland zone expand and go up? So,
but they can.
well, no, they can't.
Well, again, I think that's the question.
If you read further, you
The
can't.
way I
Oh, you're
read
saying
it,
because
it doesn't
of this,
allow-
Yes.
because
We
this
probably
is the
already
non.
had this discussion because
I'm
next
sure.
to that word expanded, I have defined that as well.
Okay, I think,
Right.
well, I think maybe we need to also ask, and I don't know if we have a town attorney or something, and just ask, can a non-conforming use anywhere, not just in our town, be expanded? I don't think you can make it
Should,
increase the non-conforming.
You think the state has a law?
No, I just don't think that you can increase a non-conforming property. You can't make it bigger.
But that would make it
larger.
not buildable, not a buildable lot. If you can't do anything to it, then you could, basically, if you have a non-conforming lot
Mhm.
and you say, I want to put a house there, you would not be able to build if this is what,
Technically.
if
Well,
that's
that's-
what's saying.
I don't know, am I reading that wrong? A non-conforming use may not be expanded. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what they're trying to say. there.
That's a
In
non-conforming
one
use.
paragraph, we say you can intensify
Eric,
your use.
that's a
if it
non-conforming
complies with the
use.
ordinance. And the
If
next
it's
paragraph says you
residential,
can't expand.
Then they can expand their
So it's
residential,
two different words
but
that
not
Not working.
not working.
if they have a
Working
mobile
against each
garage
other,
there,
basically.
they can't.
So if
expand it
we
because it's
removed
non-conforming.
3.1.3, it makes sense.
I think you gotta look at 3.5.4 also then. Oh, that's for lots, of
Right.
record, non-conforming lots, I'm
Lot
sorry.
of record, yeah.
But it basically says the same thing. If your lot is non-conforming, your residence is damaged, you gotta build on the same footprint.
Yep.
But again,
And,
I throw the argument up, if shoreland zone can do it, then why can't somebody that's not in shoreland zone do it?
But can they?
But they
Are they
can.
supposed to be doing it, I guess?
But
That's
they
what
can.
I'm trying to say.
I
According
tend
to
to
our
agree
ordinance.
with, I think the road you were started to head down there, Peg, is let's get rid of 3.1.3.
And then it
And
makes
you can do
sense.
anything on your land as long as it complies with the ordinance.
Right,
Bam.
exactly.
keep it simple. And that's
As
what
long
it
as you're
should.
meeting setbacks, as long as you're meeting septic requirements, and if we just remove 3.1.3, it kind of all goes away.
So you don't think 3.5.4 would cause any issues for anybody?
Yes, I do. I think that's next.
Okay.
I-
I'm just
I think we
jumping
need to
ahead.
look-
I was trying to read
Yeah,
it
I
all
think we need to look at
understand
that
How
next.
it all goes together.
All right, so are we all in agreement that 3.1.3 should disappear?
Well, what about point 2? Is that staying the way,
3.1.2, I thought we moved forward and said we're gonna stay with that. Keep it that
exactly
way.
the way it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of said we were all okay with 3.1.
As long as we define intensified in the,
And then 3.1.2,
Definitions.
intensified, we're gonna take that definition and put it in our definitions. Dave, you still our definition guy,
oh, damn, that just rolled right onto me. Or rolled right over me.
right? So
Yeah,
we gotta add intensified.
Intensified.
I will send you the
That was my
definition
list.
that we have here.
And the definition we're going to use, Peg,
The
is-
definition, is everybody okay with this definition? It says
3,
intensified
1, 2.
means to alter the character
Oh.
to the extent that it generates a new or greater impact.
okay, and that itself.
I'm sorry, you gotta do all that again.
That in
But
itself
a
is you
greater
can't-
You want me to
impact.
say the word, say the definition again?
Yes,
Okay, intensify means to alter the character to the extent that it generates a new or greater impact.
in what dictionary? In what,
This was just on another zoning ordinance that
I know that, which is what I'm concerned about. That's what I mean. If, I'd like to actually see it in the dictionary. I just looked it up and it didn't make sense.
Because when you, a greater impact, how is that defined? You know, if you're gonna have, add a bedroom, then you can have more people.
Yeah.
Is that a greater impact?
I mean, as
Like
long,
Matt
as
says,
long as we
on
can put,
Services on school,
as long as we can put it in there as the true meaning of that, I don't know if that's the way they were.
I mean, a greater
Yeah.
impact
Greater impact.
could be defined as any change.
Is it a home
I
business,
don't think you can take 3.
Your whole business.
3 out,
you know, a home business that causes no traffic,
because then you no longer.
but you
have
do
dogs.
something to your lot, you do something to
If
your,
you take it out, you're
your
saying
place
you
of
can
business to
expand
make it bigger, and now you have public traffic. That comes.
But
Is that-
even-
is that
As
greater
long as
impact?
it can.
Even something, a change that makes maybe a little more traffic.
I don't know.
You know, traffic was
That's
X, now it's Y. Everything you do could be considered a
Yeah.
greater impact.
All right, so where
There
are
you
we with
go.
this? I think we've gone down a rabbit hole just on this one
Here's a
section.
good intent.
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
What do you got?
Let's see if it comes. Intensification of land use. That's
Yes.
what I asked it. And so it gave a little bit different. Means any use of the premises which, in the opinion of the collector of land revenue, would entitle the landlord to increase the, oh, I guess it isn't the right one, sorry.
You lost me an opinion.
Including but not limited to the following.
Is it something that gonna be assessed at a higher value?
Unless we just put it in there the way you're reading it, Peg. As long as it's on our definition,
Who makes that determination if what the people want to do is going to cause a greater impact?
Why? That was my
No,
next
you-
question.
yeah.
In that definition.
Because what happens
last
if
few
someone
words.
says, I want to increase the number of bedrooms, and what if the person.
It's a bigger
happens
impact on
to
the
be in
land,
charge
because,
Says it's a bigger impact on services, on the schools.
Yeah.
You can't do it. So we're leaving things open to who's ever in charge, interpretation.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just don't want, I don't know why it clearly just simplification of what Matt said before. You gotta, the use has gotta stay within the guidelines of the ordinance at the time of when this lot was conformed.
I think it ought to be
The current
removed.
ordinance, not at the time.
Well, the setbacks are at the time, but,
But if you're gonna make your building bigger, now it's gonna meet
Well,
new setbacks.
not the footprint bigger. You can go maybe up, Right, but I was always under the impression that we couldn't.
I don't think that's fair. If you have a non-conforming lot and the side setback was 30 feet, now it's 40. I don't think it's fair that you have to go to the new,
I don't either.
you know what I mean?
But
I
the
think you
only
should be
thing
able
we
to.
could never do, Buzzy, is you could never go closer to the body of water.
That's state though, that ain't
Right,
us.
no, I'm saying
Yeah.
that's state, but going laterally was never an issue.
So just historically, why do we care about non-conforming lots?
Good
What do you mean?
question.
In general, why does the world, because it's in every ordinance that you probably will read, why do people care about non-conforming lots?
Because then they
Because
have to conform
right-
with the existing zoning ordinance. which
Right
means
now,
Which it
They
says.
would, a lot of times you'd be, anytime the zoning ordinance changed, you'd have to make changes on your property or home to stay up with the ordinance. By having non-conforming, it allows those people to say, okay, this is what it was, but we're gonna change it, but you're all set, you know? So that's the main reason, I think.
right now, I'll be on Derek. Just before you get to the transfer station, all those little ranches that sit there are all on 1 acre lots. Those were put in the same year, 50 years ago, the same year mine was put in. Those are now non-conforming lots.
So again,
And there's a lot of those lots here in town, a lot of them. And you would be restricting every one of those lots from putting on a bedroom, having a family with a few more kids that need an extra bedroom. These are all ranches, they're not going up, they're going out.
So if
No,
I'm just
actually,
trying to get
I built a lot of
the root issue.
Yeah.
second stories on ranches, so
Yeah.
they can go up.
But there's a lot of non-conforming lots in town, Peggy.
if zoning
There is,
gets
but it's still not our
changed
greatest
to a
portion
1
of
acre,
lots.
Huh?
then
It's not
those
our
lots
greatest-
are
No, it's not, but there's still not.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
yeah,
not.
like I said, I'm just trying to get to the root problem here, and for me, there was a reason to change the ordinance that made them non-conforming.
They changed the ordinance.
Well, I think
The
it was
5
just a
acres.
matter of adoption. When our zoning ordinance was adopted, really, I don't think that they necessarily made them non-conforming. The ordinance made them conforming, not the other way around, right?
Yeah. The ordinance made them non-conforming.
right,
Right, the change in the ordinance,
Made them
Made them
non-conforming.
something we do in the next 2 years could make more non-conforming lots.
that is correct.
Yeah. And we would be restricting even those because they wouldn't be able to expand outward. That if you leave intensified in there, they ain't able to do anything to it.
So,
Well, if you leave 3.1.3 in there, it's the same thing.
so this is what in Maine,
Right.
you can expand or change non-conforming structure or use without meeting the zone, you cannot, I'm sorry, you can't expand or change a non-conforming structure or use without meeting the zoning ordinance's standards for exceptions. That's what these are. These are
That's
our
what that
standards
says.
for exceptions.
But that's what 3.1.2 says.
For example, a typical zoning provision may require that any enlargement or reconstruction of a non-conforming building doesn't increase non-compliance or create new non-compliance.
That's the point. And that's exactly, to me, that's exactly what this section says.
Well, I would agree with that. But then why can't they go up?
They can, as long as it's not over 35 feet.
But that's not what the other, what further down says. It says it can't
Further
be
down
expanded.
Well, but we decided to scratch that, take that right out.
Right.
That's right. Touche.
So if we took that 3.1.3 out, because it can be expanded, as long as
Yeah.
it is in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance, which is what
Is
3.1.3.
And that was
30%
the last
limitation.
debate we were just
It's
having.
gone.
It's gone.
Is it?
Right.
Do they have to comply with
coverage,
the
yeah.
current ordinance, or do they have to comply with the
Current.
ordinance when
Yeah, but the
made
current,
non-
yeah,
And that's where we got in that last one.
that's not fair.
That's not fair.
Wait, it's not fair.
Right.
That's
Because
not fair.
if you, that means you can't go up. Because,
I think it means you can only go up.
Yeah, it
In a
does.
lot of cases,
Well,
it
I-
means they
I
can't go
read
up.
it
I don't
differently
know,
than
you
you
just-
guys.
You just
I
have
don't think
to,
you can.
You-
Just, I read it differently, that's all.
yeah. And that's gonna be the problem.
Right.
That's
That's
gonna
what I-
pin
We're
one
sitting
person
here
against the
and
other,
we
you know?
can't
So-
Agree on what.
Yeah.
I think that this is what we need to do. I think that we need to table this section.
Yep.
And when Michaela Jordan comes in, or whenever we start working with SMPDC, we'll revisit this section and say, tell us what you think. She'll
Yeah,
know.
because I
This
would
would be an
agree.
easy
We,
thing.
I think it would always be best to look at our ordinance and make them less restrictive, if at all possible. So if there's a way to make this less restrictive, but not, again, completely do away with non-conforming, I'm all for that too. So if there's someone who can guide us on this, because when I read it, I read it saying you can expand a building, like this one here, 354, basically says that, you can't.
Peggy, in your situation, if you needed to make the barn a little bit bigger, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what harm is being,
I could expand as long as I'm meeting setbacks,
The setbacks.
setback and
Okay.
all that.
Yeah, right.
That's why that seems not, 3.1.3 seems like it should not be there to me.
and in 50 years, if you want to expand then, you'll have to meet the setbacks of
Those
that
setbacks.
ordinance.
Of that
Exactly.
ordinance.
if you were
Exactly.
to make
That's
the
fair.
barn bigger, and you could, and
You
put
buy a
more
lot that
animals
you-
in there,
Know what your
is that
setbacks are.
changing the impact on something?
Not as I see it, but somebody else might.
Someone else may. That's my point, is trying to eliminate where anybody can say, well, she's increasing the impact. They're doing
Well,
this.
I'm increasing the impact, but let's say I had 2 horses and you're allowed 10 horses in the land use chart. That's what it means by combining with, conforming with the other provisions of the ordinance, is how I see it. I mean, like Matt's example of the supermarket, that would, obviously you can't have a supermarket on your property, so that wouldn't be in conformity with the ordinance.
Now, we do have little supermarkets in the residential neighborhoods.
Okay, so we're all in agreement that 3.1 should be tabled for SMPDC. Any more discussion on that? Okay. All right, do we want to attempt to move forward with the discontinuance of non-conforming use? Because I think that one's pretty
I think it
straightforward.
all goes together, really. I think if you read this whole section on non-conforming,
Well, I think 3.2.1 is pretty straightforward, don't you?
oh yeah, I would agree with you, yeah.
I think that's pretty much, I've read other ordinances and that seems to be the general thing. Everybody seems to say 2 years. If you're not in conformance for 2 years,
So
then.
that, again, just for my knowledge, does that mean that if I had a home and, let's say I moved to Florida and I left that home, let's see, what's it say, for a period, may not, which is discontinued. I guess, again, I'm not sure what discontinued means. Does it mean you're not living there anymore, or no one's living there anymore?
You don't pay your taxes on it for 2 years. I would say if you continue to pay your taxes on it, it's not discontinued.
It could also mean if someone had a business and then the ordinance changed.
So wait a minute though, we're talking about use. We're
This
talking
is
about use, so,
non-conforming use.
right. So obviously a residence is a conforming use. So that's off the table.
Unless it's, I guess even in commercial zone, it's considered.
It's a conforming use.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just talking about use, and if that's discontinued for 2 years, then
But if it's still allowed in that zone, then they
it's
can
allowed.
continue.
I have notes from before. It says, need less restriction and need an appeal process
For a non-conforming use, for more than 2 years, you mean?
for a discontinuance of a non-conforming use.
Let's see what.
So can I ask
You know,
a
an
question?
example
You
of-
have all these notes.
of
Did
that.
you already do all this?
Yeah, kind of.
We-
Oh, okay.
we-
Well, because
no.
again, you're reading stuff, I'm going, wow, they got so much more
Go,
information.
no.
No, this was all stuff that was tabled
Okay.
way back
okay,
when.
Okay.
So I think I had said to you way back when the ordinance review committee started.
Yeah.
We started at page 1, we did start going through it, and we went, oh
Right.
God.
Well, I
LD
started reading
2003.
some of the old minutes just to try to understand.
Yeah.
and I
We
noticed-
did not get very far. 3 is actually the last section.
Okay.
But the reason we stopped was because of LD 2003. We had to jump ahead and take care of those articles.
And then they gave us other,
Right.
It's
So
funny.
all this stuff,
what
all these notes that we've made,
restrictions
this
can
is
do,
just
though.
tables.
Okay, no, that's good. I
Sure.
just was everybody.
What town were you in?
Right,
Were you
right.
born in Revere?
Um,
In
so
Winthrop,
you're saying
must
there
have
should be
been
an
15
appeal, Dave,
doctors
correct?
that had offices in their house. And then all of a sudden, that went away. When other members became doctors, you couldn't have that.
Right.
And how does that hurt the community? Actually, it hurt in the things, you know, when our babies were born, Carol could walk right down the street, you know, to the
So how do you
pediatrician.
do that if you got setbacks that are the non-conforming part?
So a lot of
Oh,
these
so you-
things
it's
really
empty, it's
aren't
not-
beneficial.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Use not, right.
Right.
I was thinking about non-conforming lots.
Yep,
All your developments over 111 except Morris's are all over 1 acre lots,
35, you mean?
35.
Yeah.
I don't know about the one off.
They are.
Yes, it broke off Hill Road. I think that's 1 acre lots.
I think they're 2.
What is it,
but-
is it a subdivision?
No, actually, I know the ones on Ruth,
There's a
that was
lot of them.
prior to zoning. I know that Homestead Drive and Coxall was prior to zoning too, I'm pretty sure.
Isn't all, you know, all the changes started like at the
76.
at the Southern Maine
Yeah.
thing that we attended, is some of the stuff that they started pushing, and it just spread out to all these towns, is how that change started,
Yeah, yeah, and it's happening again.
and it's happening again. Yeah.
So 3.2.1, what do we think about that? I believe that is good. I think that if you discontinue a use, a non-conforming use for 2 years, you shouldn't be able to. So the
Now,
supermarket again,
non-conforming
right?
use.
Is there a provision? You know, again, I'm just
You could
concerned,
appeal to the planning board. I mean,
and
you
that
could put
could
an
be.
application.
I mean, in
into
the
the planning board.
situation that someone was doing something that wasn't detrimental, but it was, you know, not allowed anymore. Say they get sick, say they get incapacitated for a couple of years and they just can't, and then all of a sudden, you know, I look at some of these as actually hurting the communities. I mean, we don't want to beat this thing to death, but I see in small communities, the community I came from back in Massachusetts, you know, there were probably 15 or 18 doctors in all the neighborhoods that had offices in their houses. And then they retired, and if it was out for a year, you couldn't do it. And then all of a sudden, one of their children, you know, was an MT, and well, you can't do that anymore. And actually, it was a nice thing because, you know, when we had our kid, the pediatrician was right around the corner. It didn't impact the neighborhood adversely.
Yeah.
You know, but my wife could walk around the corner with the babies and go see. Then all of a sudden, you know, Glazier retires. The next one, you know, one of his kids, well, you can't open that office again. It's been 12 months.
And
This is 2
I think
years.
that's why we talked about an appeal process.
So this is.
Yeah.
No, in Arundel's, this is what Arundel's is saying for the same thing on 3.2.1. Resumption prohibited for non-conforming uses. It says a building or structure in which a non-conforming use is discontinued for a period exceeding 2 years or which is superseded by a conforming use may not again be devoted to a non-conforming use. even if the owner has not intended to abandon the uses. Resumption of residential use of a structure in the shoreland district is prohibited. Permitted, provided that the structure has been used or maintained for residential purposes within the preceding 5-year period. So that actually, as far as the structure, I don't think that they can ever stop somebody from putting a house on a non-conforming lot, can they?
According to some of that verbiage.
It sounds like 5 years would be, if in a rental, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm just.
Say you had an elderly parent that was in a home, and then they couldn't be there, and they went to live with, one of their children, and basically the house sat vacant for in excess of 5 or 6 years, then what happens? You can't go back to a residence? You can't?
I don't think a house sitting vacant means it's discontinued. I think you're still paying taxes on it. It's not discontinued.
So as long as you are maintaining, paying the taxes and everything
I
else,
would say it's not.
it's just, because the other thing would be abandonment, right?
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
If you were up in abandonment, then yeah, you were
Right.
abandoned.
So basically, even though no one's there,
They'll take it for taxes anyway.
you're paying the taxes and everything else. So you're in good standing.
We definitely are, and I think that we're gonna run into these problems
Everywhere.
right through section 7, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because everything up to section 7 is to do with growth. And this is why we were having these problems originally when we started with the ordinance review committee, because we're like, oh, current course, comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, do we change the map? Do we change the zoning districts? Do we add, it's really overwhelming. And we really need SMPDC to weigh in on
Well,
it.
for volunteers, it definitely is, yeah.
Absolutely,
If it
it's
was
just
our
not our
career,
thing.
that's right, that's a whole
exactly,
different thing.
Exactly.
I'll just go back to, we need to be more the ordinance review committee and not the ordinance writing committee.
We need to hire a planner for
And,
that.
and I think what we're getting into now is we're rewriting the entire ordinance.
We are not planners.
It's not.
We are not planners.
I thought that's what our mission statement said to do, to review, add,
Mhm.
remove. Isn't that what the mission statement you just sent out said to do?
Right, but let's act on specific things. LD 2003 comes out, we've got to act on it, right?
Flood,
The-
we acted on
The
it.
code enforcement officer says, this isn't working for me anymore, we should act on it. But to go from cover to cover
And rewrite,
and rewrite everything,
no.
this is attempt number 2 now, and we're headed down to the same road we were on attempt number 1. I don't think we'll ever get it.
So these are our options, guys. These, like I said,
I'm not sure why we have a committee. Yes, I mean,
well,
if we're
no,
gonna just go and say yes to what's here, why would you need a committee?
that's the exact point. We're not planners, we need SMPDC to weigh in. If it's something as simple as adding transitional districts, that changes everything that we've already done.
But-
And this is why I said, way back when, we need to jump ahead, go start with section 7 or 8, planning board and staff review committee, whatever, something very bland, something that isn't pertaining to growth or the zoning districts, and kind of take care of those. The dimensional requirements, that we cannot do, that's section 6. Section 7 is administration. That's something we could very easily start with and work on and get to the end. And wait for SMPDC to weigh in and say, okay, guys, let's come in, let's grab a hold of this section 1 through 6.
Because we're talking about the same thing we talked about
I
when we
know.
first brought this up.
Absolutely, we are.
My
Absolutely.
opinion hasn't changed.
what do you mean, as far as?
As far as this section 3, I think we ought to have wording in there that says they're gonna meet their setbacks of the time that the law was created.
Yes, but
But
looking
according
at
to
it
this,
from
it
higher
doesn't say that.
above, from way up high, we have to look at the whole ordinance. We are tasked with advising. What we all seem to agree upon is that we need to add some districts
Yeah,
and look at our zoning. But you cannot do that, just that, and go through and keep doing what we're doing without input from a planner. We know that. So our only options are to get completely out of sections 1 through 6 and go through sections 7 and beyond, or we just jump out of this ordinance completely and go, I don't know, to streets.
Can
Go
I ask you a question? The key word that you said is growth. You know, this plan as you want to bring in is their approach that the town needs to grow. I mean, the fundamental basis should be, what do the people of Lyman want?
It-
Do they want growth?
Well, that's exactly it, but we can't propose changes without being in touch with a planner.
But we can't propose changes unless we actually knew what the majority of the people of Lyman want. Do the majority of people want it to stay the way it is? Do people want to see growth? I mean, you know,
Absolutely. I agree.
Growth is happening with
Growth
a,
is
I don't think we're
to what
not
extent?
proposing growth.
So this
Well,
is,
planners are, you know, that's how they they plan. And I'll tell you honestly, I still, every time I drive by that old Scarborough Downs and I see what they did there, oh my God,
Oh God,
is
that was
that
Scarborough.
growth?
that's
I mean,
growth.
What do the people of Lyman actually want?
but wait a minute, this is why we keep getting caught up. And I have tried, I've been here since February in the seat, and I'm trying very hard to keep us on the rails. It's a
Right.
very hard job, because as you guys can see, looking at this zoning ordinance, it's like
It is,
trying
it's
to get, it's
overwhelming
like
at some
nailing
point.
jello to a wall.
Yeah.
You just can't get your arms around it. And the bottom line is, we're not regional planners. People go to school for years for this stuff. And I agree with you. What does the town of Lyman want? That's why we're doing this. We have to at least say, okay, this is what we propose. We started at page 1 way back when and said, oh, state's coming in and they've got this LD 2003 thing. Guess we better jump out and go fix that. We did that. We got that on. But I want you guys to know, I can almost guarantee you this is going to happen again. We're going to start going through this and another state mandate is going to come. The only thing that saved us was the veto from the governor just a month and a half or so ago. That's the only thing that saved us from having to completely redo the ordinance.
Peggy, I think your suggestion is probably the right one, is move to section 7 and get a planner to help us with this.
Sections 1 through 6 are growth. We
Yeah,
can move on.
go right
and
to
go
section 7
7 to the end.
and get
Or-
some work done,
Makes
rather
sense.
than to sit through meetings
Yeah, that
on
would-
one section.
Yes. And get them to weigh
get-
in.
Get somebody to weigh in. If we can't change this if we don't know what zones we're gonna put.
Exactly, exactly.
Absolutely.
I really want to keep this on the rails. I don't want to go down the rabbit holes like we were going last time. But it's really hard to do when
Oh, yeah.
there's so many questions to be answered.
So, right, so can I, and again, I know we've discussed this before, but just to try to get it in my mind. We have to follow what the comprehensive plan is.
Tells us to do. And
We don't have an updated comprehensive plan.
Correct.
Again, it just, from a normal point of view, it seems like you would not even start this until after that was completed and approved.
Exactly.
Then you would ask this committee to start meeting and work
I
on changing
one
these
hundred
ordinances.
percent agree. But the cart came before the horse. They sat the ordinance review committee before they sat the comprehensive plan committee. And when Lee J. Feldman came in from SMPDC, I pointedly, over a year ago, I pointedly went to him before the camera started rolling and asked him, am I crazy? Why are we sitting in ordinance review committee when our comprehensive plan needs to be redone? And he looked at me and said, exactly. And that's where we are, but
This makes it
We
harder.
got some work done.
We
we
have.
did get some
We
work
are
done, we
making
got
some
W
progress.
2003 done. We got the flood done, we got our, hopefully our map on the
That's in
ballot
the
in front of the people, so we've done some stuff.
And there's
But
still
I-
more you can do, Peggy, like
There
you
is
say,
still.
let's move on.
Onto section 7.
Yeah, I think that's the smart
makes
thing to
sense.
do.
I believe
And
that is absolutely what we do.
It's 8 o'clock. Do we adjourn and
No,
go?
we're gonna adjourn,
section-
and that will give everybody a chance
I'm free
To go
until
to
10 if
section
anybody
7.
wants to stay.
and look ahead and say, you know, we can all go and do our own homework on section 7 and come back on the 15th. Remember, we have the public hearing, the first part of the meeting.
Yeah.
And
6
then we'll
o'clock
close it's a 6 o'clock meeting, yep, the next meeting,
It's 6.
The 15th.
for the next meeting,
Okay.
yes,
Is
because we
that
have
because
public
that
hearing.
first half hour is,
Yes.
honestly?
And that's at 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was 6.
I will reach out to Lindsay and let everybody know about the scale and ask about the scale.
Appreciate that, yep.
And we'll come back, having done some homework, and we'll get started on section 7. Buzzy had suggested that we have an extra meeting. I don't know about anybody else, but that's Labor Day weekend, and I actually had a commitment for camping that weekend, so does everybody want to still have a meeting?
On Labor Day weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It'd be the 29th.
Right. So
I didn't realize it was
Thursday
Labor Day
before.
weekend.
Yeah, it's Labor Day weekend, so we'll scratch that one, and that would mean our next meeting is
First.
the 1st, right?
15th. Oh,
No.
the next one's the 15th.
Yes, the next meeting is the 15th. The one after that would be
20.
The
I got-
5th.
oh, so-
The
the
5th.
5th,
Okay.
yeah, of September.
we're
So I'll
skipping
see you
the
guys on
15th.
the 15th. We'll have our public hearing, and then we'll move on to section 7. I like this plan
Peggy,
much
thank
better.
you.
Of course.
We know it's not easy to keep everything on track.
Good guidance.
I need a motion, though.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You can't change stuff without knowing where to go with it. It's-
That's good, because my projector didn't work.
And I think Steve's right. You don't want to get.
Well, you
No,
don't
I
wanna-
just don't understand,
You definitely don't want it.
I-
to happen.
I had a couple of permits with DEP and they're very nice and a biologist come out. And I said to him, I says, let me ask you in all honesty. I said, a patio within 75